It was a busy evening at the city's most popular upscale restaurant, where the soft glow of chandeliers reflected off polished wood and sparkling glasses. The smell of delicious food filled the air, and the quiet hum of conversations mixed. With gentle background music created a warm, lively atmosphere. The restaurant was known not just for its great food but also for its attentive and friendly staff. Among them was a young waitress named Maya. She was modest and hardworking, always wearing a polite smile on her face, though she spoke little. Her black hair was usually tied back neatly, and her eyes carried a quiet determination that many didn't notice at first glance. Maya had been working at the restaurant for nearly 2 years. She didn't come from a wealthy background. In fact, she had faced many hardships in life, from financial struggles to family difficulties. But she had a secret that very few people knew about. A gift she kept to herself, hidden beneath her waitress apron. Maya was an exceptionally talented pianist. From a young age, she had learned to play the piano beautifully, a skill that gave her hope and joy in the darkest times. But for now, her life was about making ends meet, serving tables, and dreaming quietly about a better future. On this particular evening, the restaurant buzzed with excitement because a very important guest was arriving. Mr. Richard Lawson was a wealthy businessman known across the city for his flashy lifestyle and sometimes arrogant attitude. He owned several businesses, a big mansion, fancy cars, and always dressed in expensive suits. To many, he seemed confident and successful, but there were whispers that he sometimes used his wealth to make others feel small. Tonight, he was visiting the restaurant with a group of friends to celebrate a recent business deal. When Richard and his group entered the restaurant, their presence immediately changed the mood. Heads turned, and some diners whispered about his reputation. Richard liked to be the center of attention. He walked straight to his reserved table near the center of the room, smiling broadly but with a look that suggested he expected special treatment. The restaurant staff prepared to cater to his every need, hoping to impress him and perhaps earn a generous tip. Maya noticed Richard from afar. She had seen him a few times before during his visits, and each time he seemed more arrogant than the last. She kept her distance and focused on her work, but she couldn't help feeling a little nervous. She had heard stories about how he liked to belittle those who worked in the service industry, just to feel superior. She hoped tonight would be different. As the evening went on, Maya took orders from different tables, refilled glasses, and carried plates with practiced ease. Richard's table was particularly lively. His friends laughed loudly, and Richard made bold gestures as he talked about his latest business conquests. At one point, he called over the manager and whispered something, which the manager relayed to Maya with a nervous smile. Maya was asked to bring some extra drinks to Richard's table. She walked over, careful to remain professional. Richard looked at her with a smirk, and then, in a voice just loud enough for others nearby to hear, he said, "You know, it's cute how you think serving tables is the best you can do. I wonder if you have any real skills beyond carrying plates and pouring drinks." The words hit Maya like a sudden chill. The people around the table quieted, sensing that Richard was trying to embarrass her in front of the other guests. A few diners glanced her way, some with curiosity, others with mild amusement. Maya felt a flush of heat on her cheeks but did not respond. Instead, she smiled politely, placed the drinks carefully, and walked away. Richard wasn't done. He called her back and continued, "Tell me, do you ever dream of doing something better? Something more important? Or are you happy just being a waitress, invisible to the world?" His friends chuckled, and a few nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Maya's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. She was used to hard work, but this kind of public humiliation was new and painful. She wanted to say something clever, something to shut him down, but her words caught in her throat. Still, she maintained her composure and said softly, "I'm proud of my work, sir. Everyone has their own journey." Then she walked away again, leaving a silence behind her. The room seemed to hold its breath. Some people admired Maya's calmness, while others waited to see how Richard would respond. The wealthy man's expression hardened for a moment, clearly irritated that his attempt to humiliate her had not gotten the reaction he wanted. But instead of backing down, he decided to continue his game. Richard raised his glass and loudly said, "Well, maybe one day you'll surprise us all. But until then, don't forget your place." The guests at his table laughed again, and a few nearby diners whispered about his cruelty. Maya finished her shift, moving from table to table, trying to focus on her job and forget the sting of those words. Yet inside, a fire was growing. She was determined not to let this moment define her. Deep down, she knew she had more to offer the world. And tonight, something inside her began to shift. As the evening drew to a close, Maya glanced toward the corner of the restaurant where a grand piano sat quietly, waiting for someone to bring it to life. Only a few people knew that she sometimes played after hours when the restaurant was closed, using the piano to escape her worries and express her dreams. The wealthy man might have tried to humiliate her, but Maya had a secret strength, and soon she would show everyone exactly what she was capable of. The restaurant was still buzzing with the usual noise of clinking glasses, soft chatter, and footsteps on the polished floor. But the air around Richard Lawson's table had grown heavy with tension. After his sharp words to Maya, the waitress, many eyes were watching the small scene that had unfolded quietly yet powerfully. People could feel the uncomfortable energy, something unusual for a place known for its elegance and calm. Maya moved through the restaurant, carefully avoiding eye contact with Richard, who sat back with a smug smile, pleased with himself. His friends laughed and sipped their drinks, but even some of them looked uneasy. The truth was, many guests didn't like seeing someone being humiliated for no good reason. They respected the hardworking staff who made their dining experience enjoyable. But no one spoke up yet. Maya's heart still raced, not from fear, but from a mix of anger and determination. Richard's insults had not broken her spirit. Instead, they lit a fire inside her, one she had kept hidden for a long time. She thought about the years she had worked hard, saved every penny, and learned to play the piano in secret. No one at the restaurant knew about her musical talent, not even the manager or her closest co-workers. It was her private world, a place where she felt free and proud. Now, as she brought a plate of dessert to another table, Maya noticed a small group of diners whispering and watching her curiously. The story of Richard's rude behavior had spread quietly among the guests. People were curious about how Maya would respond. Some admired her quiet strength. Others wondered if she would stand up to the wealthy man. Richard caught her glance and leaned forward with a mocking smile. "Why don't you do something useful? Play that piano over there, if you even know how to play," he sneered loudly, making sure everyone nearby heard him. "Let's see if you can actually impress us." A few guests laughed, some out of nervousness, others genuinely entertained by his arrogance. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but this time she didn't turn away. She stopped for a moment, took a deep breath, and slowly nodded. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Without saying a word, Maya walked toward the corner of the restaurant where the grand piano sat. It was a beautiful, old instrument, polished to a soft shine, waiting silently for someone to touch its keys. The chatter in the room quieted down as people noticed her move. Some stopped eating, some put down their glasses, and all eyes shifted toward the small, modest waitress who was about to do something unexpected. Richard's friends looked surprised. Richard himself raised an eyebrow and whispered something to one of them, probably mocking her behind her back. But Maya didn't pay attention. Her hands were steady as she sat on the piano bench. She glanced at the crowd, feeling both nervous and confident at the same time. This was her chance, not just to prove Richard wrong, but to show everyone the real Maya. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a moment. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft and gentle, like a whisper. In the quiet room, The melody flowed smoothly, filled with emotion and grace. It was clear to everyone that Maya was no ordinary pianist. Her fingers danced on the keys with skill and passion that came from years of secret practice. The music grew stronger, filling the entire restaurant with beautiful sounds that made people stop and listen. Guests who had been chatting quietly now sat in stunned silence. The arrogant laughter from Richard's table died away. Some guests exchanged amazed glances, whispering, "She's incredible." The restaurant manager stopped what he was doing and watched in disbelief. Even some of Richard's friends looked uncomfortable, their earlier smirks fading. Maya's music told a story of hope, struggle, and quiet strength. The tune was not just beautiful, but also full of soul. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music carry her away from the harsh words and the uncomfortable eyes. In this moment, she was free. Richard's expression changed from smugness to confusion. He looked around, suddenly feeling out of place. His friends stopped talking and stared, unsure of what to do next. The man who had tried to make Maya look small was now shrinking in the eyes of everyone present. As the song continued, Maya played with increasing confidence. Her fingers moved faster and more skillfully, showing a range of emotions: joy, sorrow, pride, and defiance. The entire restaurant was captivated. People who had come for a nice dinner were now witnessing something extraordinary. A few guests even pulled out their phones quietly, recording the moment. They knew this was special and wanted to share it with others. Some whispered about how Maya deserved respect, how Richard's arrogance had blinded him. When the last note faded into silence, there was a moment of stunned quiet. Then the room erupted in applause. The sound was loud and genuine, a heartfelt appreciation for the unexpected performance. Some guests gave Maya a standing ovation, while others wiped tears from their eyes. Maya opened her eyes, smiled softly, and stood up from the piano bench. She looked toward Richard, who was now pale and embarrassed. He avoided her gaze and looked down at his drink. The man who had tried to humiliate her was now the one feeling small and defeated. The restaurant manager quickly approached Maya with a warm smile and thanked her quietly for sharing her talent. Other staff members came by to congratulate her, proud to have such a gifted person on their team. Even some diners approached her to express their admiration. The night that began with Richard's cruelty had transformed into a celebration of Maya's hidden gift. Her courage to accept the challenge had not only silenced the arrogance of a wealthy man, but had also inspired everyone present. Richard left the restaurant shortly after, avoiding attention. His defeat was clear, and no one tried to stop him. The crowd continued to talk about Maya's performance long after he had gone. For Maya, this moment was life-changing. It was proof that her worth was not defined by her job or by anyone's insults, but by her talents and her strength to stand up with grace. She knew that her journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but tonight she had shown the world and herself what she was truly capable of. The atmosphere in the restaurant had changed completely. The soft murmur of conversations was now filled with a new energy, a sense of awe and surprise that had spread across the room like wildfire. Maya sat at the grand piano, her hands still, resting lightly on the keys, her breathing steady, but her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and calm. The music she had just played had been beautiful, yes, but the moment was far from over. What she was about to do next would change everything. Richard Lawson, the wealthy man who had tried so hard to humiliate her, sat frozen in his chair, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. He had expected Maya to be silent and small, just another waitress to look down on. But instead, she had stood up to him with quiet dignity, and then with her music, had captured everyone's attention and admiration. His friends, once so confident and loud, now sat awkwardly, unsure of what to say or do. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the long hours she had spent practicing piano in secret. She thought about how music was her escape, her secret, world where she could be free from worries and judgments. She thought about her childhood, her dreams, and the sacrifices she had made. She felt the power of her music rising inside her, a force that no insult or cruelty could ever take away. Slowly, her fingers began to move again, touching the keys with gentle confidence. The melody started softly, almost like a whisper, and then grew into a beautiful flowing tune that filled the entire restaurant. The notes soared and dipped, telling a story without words, a story of strength, hope, and courage. The music was different now, more personal, more powerful. Guests stopped what they were doing. Some held their breath. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The restaurant, once just a place for dinner and conversation, had become a stage for something extraordinary. Maya's playing reached into the hearts of everyone present, stirring emotions that words could not express. Richard's face grew, red with embarrassment. He tried to look away, but he could not escape the feeling that he had lost. His arrogance, his insults, all of it was meaningless compared to the grace and talent of the young woman sitting at the piano. His friends shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Among the crowd, some people pulled out their phones quietly, capturing the moment on video. They knew this was a story worth sharing. Maya was no longer just a waitress. She was a symbol of strength and dignity. People whispered about how unfair Richard had been, and how Maya's music had shown him the true meaning of class and talent. As the song continued, Maya's confidence grew. She played with passion and emotion, her fingers moving swiftly and skillfully across the keys. The music was a conversation, a message to those who had doubted her, and to those who had watched silently, waiting for someone to stand up for themselves. The restaurant manager watched from a distance, amazed and proud. He had never seen Maya like this before, never imagined the depths of her talent. He realized that the young woman who had always been quiet and reserved was capable of commanding the entire room with nothing but her music. Slowly, the applause began to build. It started with a few guests clapping softly, and then others joined, in until the entire restaurant was filled with the sound of hands coming together. The standing ovation was spontaneous and heartfelt, a celebration not just of Maya's skill, but of her courage and spirit. Maya stood up from the piano bench, smiling humbly as she faced the crowd. She looked toward Richard one last time. His face was pale, his eyes avoiding hers. He had lost more than just a challenge. He had lost the respect of everyone around him. The night ended with people approaching Maya to congratulate her. Some shared tears. Some gave her words of encouragement, and others simply thanked her for reminding them that true strength comes from within. Maya felt a deep sense of pride and hope, knowing that this moment was a turning point in her life. Richard left the restaurant quietly, his arrogance replaced by a quiet shame. The story of that evening spread quickly, inspiring many who heard it. Maya's performance became a symbol of dignity and resilience, a reminder that everyone has hidden talents and the power to rise above cruelty. For Maya, the experience was more than just a performance. It was a moment of transformation. She realized that she did not have to hide her gifts, or be defined by her job or by others' opinions. She had the power to shine, to inspire, and to change her own story. Her journey was far from over, but now she walked with a new confidence. The piano was no longer just a secret. It was her voice, her strength, and her future. And she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had already won the most important battle, the battle for her own dignity and self-respect. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, but the energy in the air was different now, charged with a quiet excitement and respect that had not been there before. People were still talking about the unexpected piano performance, whispering about the waitress who had stunned everyone. Maya had stepped down from the piano bench, her face calm and glowing with a gentle pride. The room was alive with a feeling of triumph, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been underestimated or treated unfairly. Richard Lawson sat back at his table, trying to regain his composure. He was used to being the center of attention, the man everyone admired or feared. But tonight was different. He had walked into the restaurant thinking he could humiliate a simple waitress and make himself look powerful. Instead, he had been shown up in front of a crowd, his arrogance exposed, and his status diminished. At first, Richard tried to laugh it off. "It's just a lucky performance," he told his friends in a low voice, hoping they would agree and help him save face. But even his closest companions looked uneasy, avoiding eye contact and whispering among themselves. The reality was clear. Richard's attempt to belittle Maya had backfired spectacularly. Maya, meanwhile, returned to her work quietly, her usual poise restored. She moved among the tables with grace, receiving nods and smiles from the guests who had witnessed her talent. The manager approached her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder and saying, "You were incredible. That was the most beautiful music this restaurant has heard in years." Maya smiled softly but did not say much. She was tired but happy, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond applause. The guests, too, were still buzzing. Some approached Maya to express their admiration, telling her how brave and talented she was. Others talked about how wrong Richard had been to treat her poorly. A few guests even mentioned they would tell their friends about this night, how a humble waitress had taken over the room with her music. As the evening progressed, Maya noticed a few people from Richard's table quietly leaving the restaurant, their faces shadowed with embarrassment. Richard stayed a little longer, but he seemed lost, unsure of how to act. His usual confidence was replaced by silence. The turning point came when a well-known local journalist, who happened to be dining at the restaurant, asked to speak with Maya. The journalist was impressed by her story and wanted to share it with a wider audience. This was an opportunity Maya had never imagined. Her secret talent and courage could inspire not just the guests in the restaurant, but many more people beyond the city. Maya agreed to the interview, her voice steady but humble as she told her story. She spoke about her love for music, the challenges she had faced, and the moment she decided to play despite the risk of being judged or ridiculed. The journalist listened carefully, understanding the deeper meaning behind Maya's performance. It was not just about music, but about dignity, strength, and standing up for oneself in the face of cruelty. The article was published a few days later, and the response was overwhelming. People from all over the city, and even beyond, sent messages of support and encouragement. Maya became a symbol of hope for those who felt invisible or underestimated. Her story reminded everyone that true talent and character often lie hidden beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Richard found himself facing criticism. Some of his business partners questioned his behavior, and the story affected his reputation. He realized that wealth and power did not protect him from public judgment. The lesson was clear. Respect and kindness mattered more than money or status. For Maya, this turning point was life-changing. She began receiving invitations to perform at local events and even offers to study music more seriously. She had never dreamed of such opportunities, but now she saw a path forward, a way to turn her passion into a real future. Despite the attention, Maya remained grounded. She continued to work at the restaurant, valuing the stability it gave her and the connections she had made. But now, there was a new light in her eyes, a confidence born from knowing she had overcome a great challenge. Her story spread as an example of how courage and talent can transform lives. It inspired many to believe in themselves and to stand strong when faced with injustice. Maya had shown that humility and grace could be powerful weapons against arrogance and cruelty. The restaurant staff celebrated her quietly, proud of the young woman who had changed their world with a single performance. The guests returned, many hoping to see her play again, even if just for a moment. And Maya, with her heart full of hope, looked toward the future, ready to embrace whatever came next. In the end, the turning point was not just about winning over the crowd or silencing a wealthy man. It was about reclaiming one's dignity, proving that true strength comes from within, and showing that everyone deserves respect, no matter their job, background, or situation. Maya had done all that and more. Her music had spoken louder than words, and her spirit had shone brighter than wealth. After the unforgettable night when Maya had stunned everyone with her piano skills, life around her began to change in ways she had never imagined. The restaurant continued to be busy as always, but now there was a new kind of respect and warmth from both the guests and her coworkers. People looked at Maya differently, not just as the quiet waitress who took their orders, but as someone special, someone with a talent and a story that inspired many. Maya herself was surprised by how much her world was shifting. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. On one hand, she loved the feeling of being recognized and appreciated. On the other hand, she was aware that her life had taken a turn she had never planned for. The secret she had kept for so long, the love of music and her piano playing, was now out in the open. One morning, as she arrived at work, she found a small envelope waiting for her at the restaurant manager's office. Inside was an invitation to perform at a local charity event. The letter explained that the organizer had heard about Maya's performance and wanted to give her a chance to play for a larger audience. It was an opportunity that felt both exciting and scary. Maya thought about the invitation long and hard. She wondered if she was ready for such a big stage. After all, she had only ever played the piano in private or at the restaurant for a small crowd. But then she remembered the feeling of power and joy she had experienced while playing that night, the way the music had connected her to the people around her. She decided to say yes. The days leading up to the event were filled with preparation. Maya practiced for hours, sometimes late into the night. She chose pieces that spoke to her heart, music that told stories of hope, courage, and dreams. She wanted her performance to be more than just beautiful sounds. She wanted it to be a message of strength and inspiration. At the charity event, the atmosphere was different from the restaurant. The audience was larger and more formal, filled with people from all walks of life who had come to support a good cause. Maya felt a flutter of nerves as she sat at the grand piano on the stage. The spotlight shone brightly, and the room was silent, waiting for her first note. But when her fingers touched the keys, all her fears melted away. The music flowed naturally, full of feeling and grace. The audience was captivated, some closing their eyes to listen deeply, others leaning forward in their seats. Maya played as if telling a story, each note carrying emotion and meaning. After her performance, the applause was overwhelming. People stood and cheered, moved not only by her talent but by the courage she had shown in stepping into the light. Maya felt tears of joy and relief. This was a moment she had dreamed of, but never thought possible. The success of the event brought more opportunities, invitations to perform at community centers, local festivals, and even a music school came her way. Maya's life began to fill with music and new friendships. She found herself growing not just as a musician, but as a person who believed in the power of dreams. Despite the growing attention, Maya remained humble and kind. She continued working at the restaurant, knowing that it was her home and that many people there had supported her quietly. She shared her experiences with her coworkers, encouraging them to follow their own passions. Meanwhile, news of Maya's story spread beyond her city. Local newspapers and radio stations featured interviews with her. People admired how she had turned a difficult moment into a triumph. Her story became an example of how talent, courage, and kindness could overcome prejudice and arrogance. Richard Lawson, the wealthy man who had tried to humiliate her, faded into the background. His reputation suffered because of his behavior, and he was rarely seen in public events. Maya's rise in the community was a quiet but powerful reminder that true respect is earned through character and not wealth. One day, Maya received an unexpected visit from a famous music teacher who had heard about her talent. The teacher offered to mentor her, to help her develop her skills and guide her toward a professional career. It was a dream come true, someone who believed in her and wanted to help her grow. With the support of the teacher and her own determination, Maya began taking formal lessons. She worked hard, learning new techniques and exploring different styles of music. The piano became her voice, her way of expressing all the feelings she had kept inside for so long. As months passed, Maya performed in bigger venues, touching more hearts with her music. She never forgot the night that had changed everything. The night she had stood up to cruelty with grace and shown the world her true self. Her journey was proof that no matter where you come from or what others say, you can rise above and shine. Maya's story inspired many to believe in themselves and to hold on to their dreams, no matter how difficult life might seem. In the end, Maya was not just a waitress or a pianist. She was a symbol of hope and courage, a reminder that kindness, talent, and strength come from within. And as she played her music, she knew she had found her true calling, a calling that would continue to grow and inspire for many years to come.